Welcome back to my channel. I keep hoping I can move on, but I will complete the reactions appropriate to the Philippine Antics channel complaining about Mike's Philippine retirement. It's the last one on that subject. Let's start with what seems to really be the heart of Heidi's problem.
The truth is he's in a more than a 35-year age gap, and he's like doing everything that is just so stereotypical.
Nothing wrong with it, however.
He's got a 35-year age gap, and the whole point is that's a large age gap.
I could certainly be wrong, but since she says that's the whole point, it sure sounds like that is what really has Heidi worked up. However, not only are both Mike and his partner adults, Mike's partner is in her 30s, thus certainly mature enough to make her own major life decisions. Yet Heidi keeps stressing this large age gap. You know, it really isn't any of her business. That's a concept more people, not just gossipy vloggers, need to realize. I have no problem if Heidi personally disapproves of such large gaps. I certainly consider them to be problematic, but I only care when Heidi attacks people publicly. There are a number of things said that sound fine until you think about them a bit. For example,
and they're just shocked that you would be single. Now, all of a sudden, the one that is single, her friend will say to you, she's single and available.
If you have a single friend, you try to hook him up. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Nothing to do because he's a foreigner, just saying.
well, I think it does have something to do with them being a foreigner and in the Philippines. Sure, in the West or in the Philippines, friends try to hook up other friends. But how often do they do that when the man is much older than the woman? Not too often in the West. Next, we have a situation where Mike's phrasing is held to a very strict meaning when, sorry, it can mean more than one thing.
They don't dream of traveling on vacation. They don't dream of retiring in a faraway country.
Sorry, Filipinos do dream of this. What the hell are you talking about? Women are women.
Lies. And I say lies. Again, sorry, Mike. Everybody wants to travel.
Sure, that sounds reasonable. Doesn't everyone have dreams? But such phrases in common usage aren't as rigid as they may sound. Like someone may say, I'm going to kill my husband when he gets home, yet they have no actual intention of killing anyone. That's what this dream statement is like. Sure, people may have dreams of having something, but also think it is so unlikely that they don't expect it will actually happen. And they know it. I can dream of having the money Elon Musk has, but I'm quite confident it will never happen. So I can both dream about it, but also write it off as not a serious dream. That's almost certainly what Mike means, but if in doubt, simply ask him instead of criticizing and calling him a liar. This next part is kind of scary.
He's putting on a persona that him and little Miss Janet are in a happy spot and always in a happy spot. You never once see that they're having any problems in their relationship. Only recently did I see Old Dog and Baby May, both of them admit there are issues going on and they're about fed up. And I was like, thank God, you know what I mean?
What kind of person, other than a gossip hungry for more gossip, concerns themselves that someone always shows they have a good relationship? Even if they have some issues, there is no reason to show it in public. I can only think of one possible exception to justify making this an issue. If someone was acting as some sort of marriage counselor, telling people the right way to do things, and putting forth their own relationship as an example of perfection while putting down others, then it might be appropriate to point to actual problems they do have, but only if you can actually show there are problems. No assumptions. For the record, I never saw a hint of a problem between my own parents, and considering we had a large family covering a large age range, if both my parents were home, there would pretty much always be at least one of us kids home as well. Yet there was nothing to show a problem. I'm sure they talked over things they may not be in total agreement about, but that doesn't count as a problem. However, look at the rest of what Heidi says about Old Dog and Baby May. I don't know what recent video they were talking about, but I did look, and I couldn't find anything where they said they had issues and were about fed up. I mean, that sounds rather serious. I certainly don't trust anything Heidi says, but she's free to provide the link so I can check. But it's nuts to thank God if they did reveal they had problems, unless you take joy in the problems of others. By the way, I know lots of people who have no real interest in traveling to another country, so, sorry George, that isn't a universal thing.
Don't settle on the first girl you meet off the plane. Don't let them move in until you're sure that's the girl for you for a long, long time. Meet as many women as you can. And I'm not talking about being a playboy and banging everybody you see, but play the field a little bit.
Don't be a playboy, but play the field. That's the same thing.
Nope, it's not the same thing. Depends on the person talking and what they mean. There is a problem I'll get to in a moment, but based strictly on what George has heard so far, he's being too rigid. You see, while I'm older than Mike, it isn't by a whole lot. I well remember dating when I was young, and people did indeed play the field, which simply meant that you were not just dating the same girl. In fact, you were encouraged to date different people at first to have a more varied experience, which would help you make better judgments later. So you may date one person one weekend and someone else the next. Eventually, you might start dating one person exclusively, but not officially. And then you may reach a point where you decide to go steady, which was a big deal. And then some of those relationships would lead to engagements and marriage. This changed with the advent of modern feminism. Suddenly, as soon as you dated someone, it either ended very quickly or you consider yourselves to be at least exclusive. This is probably a good topic for another video, but suffice to say, it wasn't an improvement. But the point is, playing the field, at least to a lot of us old folks, simply means don't just lock in on dating one woman at first. Now, as I said, there is a problem because Mike continued with this.
Sow those wild oats. Get all that out of your system until you meet the perfect girl for you.
That pretty much always means having sex. Of course, that came after George's assumptions. If Mike did mean it that way, you have to combine it with what he said before about not banging everyone. When you have somewhat contradictory statements, you might need to ask for clarification. My suspicion is that Mike meant you shouldn't go around just taking advantage of women who may be overly desperate. But perhaps at the same time, he may feel it is okay if you are at least seriously considering sticking with someone, but aren't positive. Like I said, doesn't hurt to actually ask Mike to be sure where he is drawing the line.
For the most part, most Filipinos do not want to be with, a guy with a gut.
That's interesting. I would have thought the same thing. But I've seen a lot of Filipinas talk about how they prefer a guy with a pillow. No, not all, and I have no idea what percentage, but of those I heard talk about it, it was a common view. Sure, as pointed out before, women may lie, but I won't assume all these Filipinas were lying either. Mike then talks about the problems if you take your younger Filipina back to the U.S.
If you're in your 70s and this girl is in her 20s or early 30s,
Which
it's not
that's
going to
where
last
he's
there.
at.
It's not going to last there. And you got your pension, but you need more money coming into the household, so you're going to probably have her go get a job. When they all get off work, they all go say, hey, let's go get a drink. And then they start talking. And they start saying, oh, your husband's 70? You're so beautiful. You should have somebody younger, somebody more active. She's just working. And then coming home taking care of an old man. It's no longer coming home taking care of her husband. You take a beautiful Asian woman and you drop her off in an area to work or to live, men are going to show interest in her. Men are dogs. We're all dogs. Young guys are going to say, what are you doing with that old guy? And they're going to think, maybe I shouldn't be with an old guy. They're going to make it seem dirty that the young girl's with the old guy.
This is all true, but before getting into the details, let's listen to George's reaction.
If you take a Filipina to the U.S. and they leave you, you never had them in the first place. If they're a good person, they will never leave you. You can be out on the freaking streets
That is
and
true.
they will not leave you
Through good
because
and
that's
bad.
what a good person does.
This sounds good too, except it isn't exactly true. I could say, a good person never lies, Yet probably most people we think are good, including ourselves, have probably lied, and not just a white lie to protect someone's feelings. Likewise, a good person never steals, yet they may take pens or other little things from work that don't belong to them. How about a big one? Adultery. Surely a good person would never do that. But for those that are all familiar with the Bible, you may remember King David. You know, the same guy who, as a boy, slew Goliath. The Bible says that God declared David was a man after his own heart. Sounds like pretty high praise to me. Yet David was a sinner, like the rest of us, including committing adultery, which is what most connects us with this issue of bringing a pretty Filipina to the West. You see, it has everything to do with temptation and being human. It's why good married men will try to avoid situations where they will be alone with other women. They have no intention of cheating, but they are intelligent enough to realize everyone is subject to temptation. Either a good person can still have serious flaws, or literally no one is a good person, including gossipy Heidi. It's in the Bible. George continues with this.
You really think that a woman that you married here or with here isn't thinking that already? Let's say a younger American comes by, that this doesn't cross their mind?
I'm sure it does. I'm also well aware that men who love their wives will still notice a pretty girl passing by in the mall. Though in most cases, because they love their wives, they pretty much forget about them 30 seconds later. But if the pretty girl flirted with a man when the wife wasn't around, that temptation thing can cause problems. One more comment from George about Mike's views.
Why wouldn't he consider Janet as the prize? Because where else can he find somebody like that?
Well, if George is questioning where else Mike can find somebody like Janet, doesn't that mean that women are women everywhere is not exactly true? And maybe he does think of her as a prize. Mike was simply pointing out to men who may go to the Philippines that they are often prized more than in the West, which is true in general. But that does not mean that when you find someone, you don't also consider them to be a prize. Actually, the best situation is if both people, once they find each other, consider each other a prize. But if George has doubts, he could always just ask Mike how he feels about his partner. Finally, since Heidi just can't stop herself from talking about the Filipina P, we have one more item to examine as she talks about P again.
Because she's attacking another girl based on things being said, including calling her out for being a fans only. And I'm like, but does she not? She's not doing it because it's not legal here in the Philippines. But some of the stuff that she's put on, if you look at a lot of her videos, they're indicating stuff that is sexual, in my opinion.
Heidi seems like she is saying P would do OnlyFans if it wasn't illegal in the Philippines. Apparently, Heidi can't imagine that P wouldn't do it anyway. Sure, P wears some sexy outfits. That's all they are, sexy. As I pointed out with Mike's Philippine journey, who made similar attacks, they are part of skits, not her normal outfits. And you can see the same things on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show decades ago, as well as primetime shows like the old Carol Burnett Show. Likewise, P sometimes makes some comments that are double entendres with a sexy connotation. So what? This is nothing like women who are taking their clothes off on OnlyFans or offering special pictures for extra money. After all, P has a Patreon, yet nothing on it shows anything particularly designed to attract the sexual attention of men or offering to send people sexy pictures. But this is the kind of crappy attacks you should expect from trolls and gossips. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.